Hey guys, welcome back. For those of you that are new here, my name is Kovi and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all about my propagation boxes, as well as I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your own DIY cheap and affordable propagation tank that in my opinion kind of lasts longer than some of these propagation boxes that I'm about to show you guys. But yeah, let's show you guys the propagation boxes that I'm actually talking about. And it's these clear plastic propagation boxes. Now, what I've noticed with these clear plastic propagation boxes, they do work amazingly well, but there are some flaws to this, to these boxes. One of them being is that the price range on these boxes tend to reach really high prices as they get bigger and bigger. Like these smaller ones sometimes are quite affordable. You can find them for like under $100. But as soon as you start getting these clear containers that are 50 liters and above, you're going to be paying well over about 250 Rand and above for those 50 liter containers. Whereas if you look on Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace, any of your online stores that sell secondhand goods, you can come across some really cheap glass aquariums. Even some of my friends in the aquarium hobby that make tanks make them at really affordable prices. So you can always find these glass aquariums, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. This is actually a glass aquarium that I had just laying around that I wasn't using anymore. It's a 1.5 foot tank. I think it should be around about 45 liters. And I got this for, I think, around about 60 bucks. So it's a really, really reasonable price, and it lasts much longer. Also with these plastic boxes, what I've noticed is that it tends to get really, really brittle as time goes by. As you can see here, it's already started chipping off. If you look here, it's cracking there. I've even tried sticking it with super glue and stuff, and it just keeps on breaking. Like I stuck this with super glue and it lasted for maybe a week and it just broke off again. And then the whole container just starts getting brittle over time. So I don't think it's a great thing to invest so much of money into if it's not going to last you as long as you'd like. So I'd always go towards the glass tank method because it seems to be much more affordable for all you guys out there. What I will do is I will leave links and contact details for some of the guys that I know that sell tanks and stuff, glass aquariums, for reasonable prices in my description below. So make sure you check that out as well. But yeah, the whole idea of a propagation box is just to keep in the humidity and the heat, creating like a small greenhouse, like a mini greenhouse effect for your plants to root and to grow in. Now, I've been trying two different methods so far with my propagation boxes, actually three. One was just placing plants in jars and putting them in the propagation box with no media. And that didn't seem to be going as great because there wasn't as much humidity as I would have loved in those boxes. So I think I would have had to place more glass jars of water. That's just going to be taking up a lot of space. So I didn't go that method. What I did do was I used Perlite in one and I used my normal potting mix in the other. Now, why I used two potting medias in these containers, not only to see which one works better, but also sometimes some plants don't root as well in a certain media as well as they would root in another one. For instance, I find Perlite a great media to put in your propagation boxes if you are rooting things that are much more tougher, I would say. If it has a thicker stem or if it's already starting to establish some roots. Like in this box, if you guys can see, I have a Maranta Leucanova, I have Tradescantia tricolor, and let me turn this around so you guys can see. look at what I have in that corner. How cute is that? That is a watermelon peperomia. I had that rooting in water for quite a long time first. And once it started developing roots and I noticed like a very tiny shoot coming out of it, like it was the size of a pinhead, I think. And I just went ahead and popped that into some perlite because I think it will help it acclimate itself from being water rooted, and then when you put in perlite, it will help it adapt more to a solid media, I'm guessing. So from there I could probably take it from the perlite and then root it into normal potting soil and have a plant after that. I also forgot to show you guys in this corner, I also stuck in that little corner there, I also stuck a cutting of my Peperomia angulata just to check if it actually roots well. And I haven't actually seen this, but I'm going to pull it out. And yeah, it actually seems to be getting roots, like right there where the leaves are. You can see there's like perlite attached to some roots, and as well as right there, like right there and right there, if you guys can see. So it seems to have worked quite well. These roots do look very white and fuzzy, something like what you'd get in water roots, but that's kind of cool to know that it's successful in there. The Maranta that I have, okay, so you can see this has like a lot of roots. Like when I had it in water, it only had that long root, and you can see the difference between that root and all these other roots that are filled with perlite. It's just sending out a huge amount of this thing. And all these leaves that it sent out are all new leaves. Like this was the leaf that I stuck in the container with the node cutting, and I'm getting all these roots that's there. So that's working quite well for me so far. I'm not sure when I'm going to be putting it in soil. I'm actually liking this cutting for more of a terrarium setup, I'm thinking. So I do have a large bowl that I wanted to do a small terrarium setup, and I think the Maranta Lupinova will be an excellent candidate for that. The leaves tend to be coming out quite small compared to the original leaves, so I'm hoping maybe it just stays that small size and it keeps on pushing out small leaves so I can put it in that glass bowl terrarium. Okay, so that is the success rate in perlite. I'm gonna place this down 1 minute, and then in this box right here I have just my general potting mix that I put some of my cuttings in, and I just misted it with a spray bottle, and every now and then I tend to mist it. So I want to show you guys what I have in this. And this, I have some watermelon peperomia leaf cuttings. And the story behind this is that my watermelon peperomia that I got from the nursery, it kind of, because there was only one available, so I did not know how watermelon peperomia is supposed to feel like. And to me, for peperomia, the leaves kind of felt flimsy, but I thought maybe that's just how that species is. And as time went by, the leaves just started dropping, and it just kept on getting more and more bare. And I said, okay, something's not right with this plant. I pulled it out of the pot, and I noticed that there is literally no roots. It's not even root rot or anything, it's just no roots. There's just a stub that was in the soil. So me wanting to save this plant and knowing that if I just put it in into my own potting mix, it's just gonna die off. So I cut up all the leaves, and I took that stem cutting and I put it in water that's in the perlite right now, and the rest of the leaves was so flimsy that I knew that even if I put it directly into soil, it wasn't going to last. Okay, so what I ended up doing was, because I wanted to save this plant, was I ended up cutting off all the leaves, and then to get a higher success rate, I even went a step further and I cut the leaves in half. Now these leaves were very, very flimsy because there was no water being sucked up to the roots. Not roots. There was no water being sucked up by the roots and put into the leaves. So I just knew from then that if I stuck those leaves directly into soil, it was not going to last, it was going to rot away. So after taking the leaf cuttings, I cut them in half, and then I placed them in a bowl plate, and then I filled the center with water. Made sure that the tip of the leaf where I cut it just touches the water, and I left that for a day just to absorb some water, because that was my understanding that it had a lot of veins on the leaf where I cut it, and I was assuming that it was just going to suck up water and become more stable for me to put into soil. I put 11 cuttings in the soil, and from the 11 cuttings, there's 8 cuttings that actually survived. So 3 of them did not make it, and those 3 leaves were already like kind of drying up and looking kind of miserable. So I took a chance and I just stuck it in, hoping that it would root. It didn't, but life's all about chances, and you never know, maybe one of them could have rooted. But since then, as you can see, I've done this probably about 2 months back to 3 months back, and the leaves are still looking good. And I'm not sure if you guys can see the back of it, but there's a whole bunch of roots coming out from the leaves. And where is this one? Okay, it's right here. So I'm not sure if you guys can see the second leaf from the bottom. Let's just see if I can show you guys. Can you see that there? That little tiny thing? That's a new peperomia shoot that's actually popping out from there. So that's kind of cool and awesome to see. And what I'm going to be doing with this is, as soon as it roots properly and starts sending out kind of like mature leaves, then I'm just going to take sections of the soil from this box and put it directly into a potting soil mix and into a pot. So I think it'll make the transition much more easier for this plant, because I'm not going to take off all the soil from the roots or anything. I'm just going to cut a section of this. So what I'll end up doing is I'll cut around that there and take the soil as well, and then place it in a pot and pot it up, and it should make the transition much more easier. So both of these methods seem to be working for me. Me personally, I prefer the Perlite method, mainly because a lot of the time with soil methods, you have to renew the soil, and it picks up mold at times if you water it or mist it a bit too much, and if it's too humid in here. Also, what tends to happen is sometimes, well, it tends to happen with the Perlite as well, like it does develop some sort of algae on it. I know I've left some of these containers outside where it was just getting a bit too much of light, and it developed like a blue-green algae on it, which was not great at all. So I had to just like dunk all those cuttings away. But yeah, that is the propagation boxes. Okay, so now I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your own DIY propagation tank. All you're going to need is a glass aquarium. Now you can either choose to buy it brand new, and I'm sure you can pick up these 1.5 foot glass aquariums for around about $100, because they're fairly cheap, and it's 5mm glass. If you want to make your own tank, if you got glass lying around, then you can make it. You can go online and search on Facebook Marketplace. You can search your online stores that sell secondhand goods, and you should find these tanks at fairly good prices, because for a 1.5 foot tank, it tends to be like around about 45 liters, I think. So yeah, it's real value for your money if you're using it for propagation, because I feel glass aquariums last much longer than the propagation boxes, like those clear plastic boxes. So I'm slowly moving on and using all my aquariums that I'm no longer using for fish. I'm going to be using them all for propagating my plants. Now, the only problem that you're going to be faced with in using one of these tanks as your propagation tanks is keeping in the humidity with the canopies that it comes with. Now, the canopies that it comes with, I don't really use, because to me, it does not hold in the moisture, it does not hold in the humidity, or it practically doesn't do anything to create that greenhouse effect that you want in this tank. So I scrapped the canopy for this tank, and I went ahead and did my own. You can either choose to get a piece of glass cut to the size of your tank and just place it on top of the tank with hinges on the side, so you can just lift it up for air ventilation. But what I also did was, for this tank, I did have some perspex lying around, and what I did with the perspex, I used a soldering iron, and I just marked I measured the size of the tank on the perspex, and then I went through it with the soldering iron, and then I went with the handy cutter, the sharp blade, and I just snapped it, and I thought that it would break off completely, but as you can see, it's still attached there, and I left it because it kind of makes for a cool lip that you can keep on your tank, kind of like that. So you can place it like that, and these would hold in the moisture much better. It'll also allow for a grow light to be placed on top of it. That's if you're going to be using grow lights. For me, I haven't started using grow lights as yet because I have plenty space that has bright light coming through, and they generally are working for me, but I am slowly running out of space, so I think I'm going to be looking more into using grow lights. I do have 2 4-foot grow lights that have 2 different color spectrums to it, so I will be testing them out very soon, and I will show you guys a video on those. But yeah, if you don't have perspex and you need something to cover this, there's always something that you can use in your home, and that is cling wrap. Now, if you know cling wrap, it's just clear cling wrap. I think the one that I was using for this is the cling that they use to wrap around the furniture and stuff like that. Also to wrap around boxes for shipping. That's the type of cling wrap that I use. I just used about 2 to 3 layers of it. And then what I did was I placed the cling wrap on top of the tank, and then I used buff tape, and I just used half the buff tape on this side and half the buff tape on top, pressing it down so it creates kind of like an angle on the tank. Now you want to do this on the tank, and you want to apply probably about, I think I used about 5 to 7 layers of buff tape, and after I did that, I used duct tape to go over it just to give it like a much more neater look. And what happens is it just slides on your tank, and you have a cool canopy. You can also put a grow light over this, and I did have this on previously before I was filming the video, and you can see the humidity that's collecting, the condensation of the water that's collecting on top of the cling. So yeah. And I just had just a little water that was swishing around here just to test it out to see how the humidity holds. And it's holding quite well in this. But what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be putting a thick layer at the bottom of perlite. And what you want to do with the perlite is you want to pre-soak the perlite. You want to wash the perlite just to get rid of all the debris that's in here. And because what I noticed is when I was soaking the perlite, I noticed that there was a lot of debris that was sinking to the bottom of the container. So that made me realize that there's a lot of dust and sand particles, and a lot of like, sometimes you get like small tiny twigs and leaves that are stuck in between there, and you don't want that kind of stuff inside your propagation tanks, because that will just encourage, I'm assuming it's gonna encourage algae growth and that kind of stuff. So you don't want that in your propagation tanks. So I'm just going to be putting about maybe a nice thick layer. Probably about, I would say 5 centimeters of it. Yeah. So after you rinse and you wash your pellet, you want to leave it to soak for maybe about 20 minutes or so. Just for it to absorb some of the water. And what that's going to help with is it's going to help increase the humidity in this propagation tank. Now, I could have filled this tank with a layer of water or put water bottles in certain corners, but I felt that was just going to be, I didn't want the water to be swishing around in the tank, neither did I want to have glasses of water in this tank that's floating around. So I opted for Perlite. And what the Perlite also helps, what I noticed is that if you got glass bottles that you're trying to propagate in water, you can always just push it into the Perlite and it helps to keep it stable in that Perlite, instead of just placing it in a glass box or at the bottom of the tank. And then when you lift it up, it drops or it falls and that kind of stuff. So stability, high humidity, it helps with. Yeah, I think that's about it. When you're working with Perlite, be aware that it is very, very messy. It's going to be sticking to your hands. Okay, so then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting some of my propagations in this tank. I'm probably going to be propagating my melanochrysum and then placing them in this tank. And yeah, and then I'll see from there. Now, there are other things that you can use as your media for increasing humidity and for propagating, such as things like sphagnum moss. Now, sphagnum moss is just like a fluffy moss that you get. It holds in like a lot of moisture that will help with the humidity, and it helps with aeration. But what I figured with a lot of these medias that they use for propagating, it doesn't actually hold much nutrient content. It's just about something that can hold in a lot of moisture and something that can give your roots a lot of aeration. And sphagnum does that, Perlite does that. I know Harley G uses a lot of sphagnum moss, but I know that sphagnum moss is not readily available in a lot of places in South Africa, as well as whenever you do find them, they tend to be quite expensive. For me, the cheapest option was to get Perlite, because I think you can get Perlite for around about 200 to 300 bucks for I think it was like a 100-liter bag or 200-liter bag. It's just like these massive bags that I get of Perlite, and it lasts me kind of like the whole year. But I'm probably going to have to get another bag of that because I'm starting to do a lot of propagations in Perlite alone. Other media that you can use is stuff like this green moss. Now, from my research, this was labeled as sphagnum moss, but from what I've read online, it seems to be a moss like Oregon moss or Oregon green moss. A person did tell me that it's a fake moss or it's just going to collect mold, but when I soaked this moss in water, it gave me like this fragrance. Like when you smell it, you can smell something that's synthetic and you can smell something that's more natural and more earthy, and I was getting a much more earthy smell with this. And another friend did tell me that when he soaked this and put it in his terrarium, it did start to grow. So I am going to be doing an experiment, probably just put a few pieces in a small container and see if it grows further from there. But you can use this in your propagation tanks. One of my friends did say that he rooted his melanochrysum in this green Oregon moss, and it even pushed out a new leaf for him, so I think you can use this. Another really cool thing that I really like to use, that's a sustainable substance, which is coconut husks. Now, not so much coconut coir, but it's the coconut husks that I get from cleaning coconuts for prayer and stuff. And what I do is I just chop it up into chunky bits like this, if you can see, into like small blocks. And I soak it for about a day, and then I squeeze out the extra moisture and add it into a propagation box. I'm probably going to try and propagate something in here and then see how that works for me. Yeah, so coconut husk also holds in moisture. It allows for great aeration, kind of same thing as sphagnum moss and the green moss. So it should work. I've seen a lot of people in Asia using more coconut husk byproducts or coconut byproducts for use in their gardens. So trying to do a little bit more research on how successful this is. I will be doing an experiment using perlite, sphagnum moss, Oregon green moss, coconut husk, as well as leca, and see which one propagates the best out of them. But cheapest option for me right now is Perlite. Okay, so I think what I'm going to be using these tanks for is to cut and propagate my philodendron melanochrysum. And I'll give you guys updates on that as well. But yeah, I think that's about it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found some of the information that I shared with you guys helpful and handy. Remember that I'm no horticulturalist or botanist. I'm just sharing my own personal experiences with you guys and the information that I've learned throughout the years, as well as information that I've been receiving from some of my plant friends. A big shout out to Jesse Casper for sharing these propagation methods with me and helping me to get the courage to move away from water propagations and move on to perlite and other types of propagation methods. I just learned from other people that are in the hobby. I learned from other hobbyists, gather information, try it out myself, and if I'm successful with these methods, then I share it with you guys. I think that's the end of the video. I will see you guys next week. So cheers for now, guys. Bye.